review of what we went over last week, and then we're actually going to play today.
Awesome.
And do some different bowings, talk about weight transfer, pronating of the right hand, and all that fun stuff. And hopefully by the end we can get to some fingering. So let's just start with our bow hold first, really quickly, and just go over what we went over last week. So if you wouldn't mind showing me your bow hold. Perfect. And did you notice any problems this week when you were practicing? Did you tweak it at all, or?
Yeah, sometimes like my bow hold like creeps up, I guess, and it like, but yeah, I've definitely been like stopping and like repositioning my bow hold to make sure it doesn't do that.
Okay,
But,
there are
yeah.
some beginner bow holds, but you did mention to me that you had already had a little experience playing viola, and because the semester's only like 3 months or 4 months, so I figured you have a good grasp of how to hold it, and it looks excellent and perfect. So we're just gonna, actually I should also mention, when we're holding it horizontally like this, we should always support it with the left hand, just because it causes unnecessary tension in the right hand. And when we're not supporting it, we can hold it vertically like this. Perfect, looks good.
Okay.
Let's try the viola now. And now the viola hold.
Okay.
Good. And has it felt good all week when you were practicing? Did you notice anything different?
Not really, no. I wasn't like clenching the viola between my neck and my shoulder, so that's good.
That's good. Did you do the tension checks? Awesome. Okay, and also in our last video, Dr. Tramposh did mention that your left hand at times did look a little too open, opened out, kind of like this.
Oh, okay.
So just keep an eye on that. But aside from that, that's fine. Just keeping it too open causes unnecessary tension, and then you're having to reach and make very flat fingers when you want everything to be rounded.
Okay.
So yeah, looks good. Okay, so let's put the two together now. Let's just do some détaché bowings in the middle of the bow. So if you look at our bow, we're going to kind of eliminate this section and this section, and just place some bows in the middle, make some quarter notes. And we'll play it on the G string. Good. So there's this Suzuki method that says that for the first few months with a beginner learning, you should actually isolate certain parts of the bow, and maybe a teacher will only have you play the top half of the bow for 3 to 6 months to really grasp the concept of what your hand is doing over here and how much pressure you should be putting with your index finger. But we don't have 3 to 6 months, so I'd kind of like to use Suzuki's method a little bit, but with isolating certain parts of the bow in our lessons, and I'd like you to do that in your practicing as well, just when you're warming up. Okay, so the bow is actually quite heavy all by itself, and there's really never really, unless you're doing some crescendos or accents, there's never really a lot of need to put a lot of pressure. So the weight of it really does all the work for you. And so if you were to look at the bow, where do you think most of the weight is on the bow?
Probably towards the frog.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're playing more in the middle and frog, the middle it's very balanced, but at the frog, your pinky is really holding the weight. That's why it's so important that your pinky is resting very comfortably on the edge there. So when you're at the frog, your pinky is really holding a lot of the weight. As you go to the middle, the weight transfers. It's a little more between the index and pinky. And when you get to the tip, there's obviously not a lot of weight in the bow there. So I don't want to say apply pressure because I don't want you to get tense, but your index finger controls the volume and dynamics you get at the tip. So what I'd like to do is just do some simple quarter notes in each section of the bow, just for you to get a sense of what your arm looks like, what shapes your arm to elbow is making, and where you feel the need to put a little more pressure. I'm going to find a better word for that. Where you feel the need weight transfer.
Okay.
So let's try in the middle again.
Okay. Just on the G string?
Yeah, just on the G string. And your wrist looks really good. Just make sure your elbow is also perfect. Now let's go to the tip. And so do you feel your index finger kind of taking over that?
A little bit.
And now the frog. feel it in your pinky?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's also take a second and just look at the shapes your arm and wrist are making when you're in the different parts of the bow. So since you're at the frog, we'll go there.
Okay.
So you want to make sure, since you're reaching over a bit more, that your elbow is pretty much in line with the end of your bow. Perfect. So you don't want the duck arm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that looks good. So yeah, we'll just go to the frog.
Oh.
To the frog.
Oh.
Yeah. And so if you can kind of turn your attention over here, do you see the shape you're making right here? It's like a triangle. Perfect. Now go to the middle of the bow. So it's a bit more of a square, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's square is different. So my arm is probably longer than yours. So just make sure it's in line with the bridge as well. So where my bow lands with my square is going to be different than where your bow lands. So your bow lands right there, and it makes a perfect square. Now let's try the tip. Okay. I'm not really sure what shape that is, but you can see the difference, right?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And so those can be like contact points, checkpoints for you. Always make sure you can let go. To always make sure your elbow is in the right spot and what shape your elbow is making, and kind of to keep you on track.
Okay.
And then you won't have to check so often; it'll just become second nature for you.
Okay.
So let's do a few more bow exercises.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do is on the G string, you're gonna play 4 quarter notes at the frog. So. And do the same at the tip. Okay. And do that a few times, and then we'll switch rhythms. And take your time and really pay attention to what your hand is doing, and keep your elbow nice and high. Like what you're doing with your wrist too. So it's tricky, right? Because you're using your shoulder and your elbow, but I really like that, especially at the frog, you were bringing your wrist into play, and you have a beautiful form with your wrist, so that's great. Let's try some string crossing. So the important thing about string crossing is that you need to, every time you switch a string, you need to reevaluate what your right hand is doing. So if I'm on, let's say I'm on A. So let's say I'm on A. I'm over here, but then I move to D. Everything switches, and my elbow has to go up with it, so nothing can be left behind. And then you move to G, and you don't ever want to be too high, but everything needs to be in line. Okay. So a cool exercise to do with that is to place your bow right here. Right at the frog, actually. Actually a little high, maybe the balance point. Perfect. And kind of, like wave almost, and let your elbow follow through with that. And it's just a soundless way to, perfect. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start on C, and in the middle of the bow, just do 4 quarter notes, and then we're going to switch to G, 4 quarter notes, and do it all the way up and all the way down. Nice and slow, and just keep an eye on your wrist and your elbow, and make sure your elbow's always in the right position, according to the string.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay, and it feels good?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I know it's something I'm kind of telling you to consciously think about, but if you consciously think about it now when you're practicing, then it'll just become something that's second nature, and you won't ever think about my elbow has to match where my arm is.
Okay.
And so because we're talking about pressure with the fingers, I'd like to do a little bit of some dynamic work.
Okay.
So obviously the bow is heavier at the frog, so you don't ever really have to put too much pressure down. You don't ever want to make your hand too tense. But let's just say, let's just play a whole note on G that is forte.
Okay.
And so where did you have to start really putting on the pressure?
Like when I got like
Towards the top half of the bow.
Right, because
Or
your
like
hand
middle,
isn't right
top
on
half.
top and it's not as heavy there. Can you do one whole note down bow and then one whole note up bow? And forte the whole time?
still on G.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and what if that were to be piano? Great. And another trick that you can use is to tilt the bow slightly. So tilt the bow
Okay.
slightly outward. When
So
you
towards the
want,
fingerboard?
yeah, when you want it to be piano, and you don't have to do it the whole time. I find it's most helpful when you're at the frog, when you're trying to control the sound, and obviously you're not going to be doing a lot of piano work at the frog. But for today's purposes, try tilting your bow slightly, and then with the piano. Go ahead. Perfect. Good. I like how you flattened your bow as you went to the tip, because you knew you needed a bit more force as you went to the tip. And so the cool thing about an upper stringed instrument, and I'm sure a lower string, is that the control we have with our bow, and we kind of take for granted the fact that we can turn our bow ever so slightly and create a whole different sound, because you're just on the tippy 2, 3, 4 hairs at that side. So you can use that to your advantage. What I'd like to do is another little exercise. So I'd like you to start at the frog, do 4 quarter notes at the frog, forte, and then when you get to the middle, do 4 more, mezzo forte, and then when you're at the tip, piano, and then on the way down, 4 at the tip, piano, mezzo forte in the middle, and then forte at the frog.
Okay. So I start off piano, mezzo forte, forte.
Forte, mezzo forte, piano.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
And go ahead. Awesome.
Okay.
I was actually expecting you to stop and lift your bow and move it to the middle, but no, it was awesome. Because
Okay.
the next thing I was going to talk about was transition, so you beat me to it. So you have actually really nice transition, and it takes a little while to get used to, especially when we start string crossing, the transitions and weight transfer. And just on the one string, what you just did was really nice. And I was watching your bow hand, and I just want to make sure that you keep your thumb bent. Not super bent, but I noticed towards the end, it got not just
My
straight.
shallow bow hold.
Yeah, not just straight, but it started going in
Oh, okay.
a little bit. So just watch out for that.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be super bent the whole time. It needs to be flexible enough to be able to move. So when you're higher up, I'll use a bow. When you're higher up, it's obviously going to be more bent, and then it's going to kind of flatten out, and then everything's really going to get a bit more straight and flat as you go to the tip. So that's where I noticed that your thumb was kind of going in the opposite direction. So it's okay though. Like, you understand that things have to flatten out.
Okay.
As long as you remain flexible and you're able to, when you come back to the middle, because you have great wrist work, but it's also finger work. So as your wrist is moving, your fingers are moving as well. But that was great.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to be doing some string changes. So what I'd like us to try to do is to do some bow changes between the G and the D, and we're not going to do legato, we're going to keep it détaché, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 on G, 1, 2, 3, 4 on D, and just go back and forth between the two and try to distinguish. I know we did this with all 4 strings, but we're kind of leading into our legato, so I just want you to quickly go over where your elbow should be, and if you can make more like 8th notes or 16th notes, just in between those 2 strings, right in the middle, or near the balance point. And then, go ahead. And now, little low tune. Very out of tune, but go ahead. And just make sure that your elbow is ever so slightly kind of lifting with you.
Okay.
And so if you were to draw the direction that the bow was going, it would really look like this. When you're switching strings, it's really switching in and out. It doesn't look that obvious, but everything the bow does is very rounded. So if you can keep that in mind when you're transferring the weight between strings and letting your elbow follow your right hand. Can you try it again? Just the ba-dum, ba-dum on G and D. Great. Now let's try C to G to D and back down. So ba-da. In 3.
Okay.
And start a little lower on the bow. Yeah. That's awesome. And it can, if you're trying too hard, it can look a little too mechanical. Not you, but in general, it can look mechanical, like boom, 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 and you're at level here, then this level, then this level. But I really like how you're very smooth about it. And so to keep in mind the little infinity symbol over there, let's try all 4 strings. Okay, so now try all 4 strings going up and all 4 strings going down, and try to use as much of the bow as you can evenly. So you could actually, if you were to imagine your bow being divided into 4 sections, try making each string a section and then go back down. Nice and even. And make sure that you're going right to the frog and right to the tip. So don't be afraid, use as much bow, and if you hit it at the top or the bottom, that's fine, and you'll get the hang of it. Can you try it again?
Okay.
Thanks. That's awesome. Really good. So when you're practicing this week, when you're working on your pieces and your scales and stuff, if you wouldn't mind just taking 5-10 minutes at the beginning of each lesson and just going over some of the bow changes. And something I want to show you for the very end, it's we're going to do a little fingering. So we'll start on the C string. And you're going to find where D is. So what I like to do to warm up, and especially just to kind of ingrain into your head where the fingers are, for one bow. And you can do that up the scale in different positions, especially in different positions. But for starters, just do first position on each string, and each trill on that note gets one bow. You could do 2 bows if you want, but for time's sake, just do the 1 bow. Would you mind just trying it on the C string?
Wait, so you do open and then D?
Yeah, so open 1, open 1, open 1. Perfect. And I'm I'm just a little concerned about your wrist. Yeah, it just looked like it was coming out of it there.
Okay.
So, yeah, are you having difficulty kind of rounding your fingers? Do you feel
Yeah,
like you need to
maybe a little bit.
overcompensate a little
Yeah.
with the wrist? So I just don't want you to hurt yourself. Kind of, it's good that you are propped up like that. You just want to keep your hand nice and closed and everything relaxed. Your thumb also looks a little tense, so I saw him kind of sneaking underneath. So would you mind trying that again? I just want to look at your thumb. Okay, so I like that exercise. It's something I've always done since I was learning my primary instrument, just to kind of get into your head, and you can close your eyes and go up into different positions. And even if you're working on a hard passage in your piece where you may not be able to hear the note in your head, just to kind of do it over and over and trill out, that's really the best.
Okay.
So that's awesome, and I hope you have a good week practicing, and let me know if you have any questions. But I think you're doing really well.
Thank you.